This one, I just got to say, I have no words. Black Chicagoans slam Mayor Johnson for replacing them with migrants. There you go. So the Great Replacement theory is accepted now by the black community in Chicago. They're demanding reparations, a carve-out on a $6,000 a year property taxes that whites, Asians, and Hispanics would still have to pay. Chicago activists are bashing Mayor Brandon Johnson for trying to replace blacks with migrants. That's what they're saying. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Great Replacement theory is no longer a conspiracy theory. It is now a BLM fact. And if anyone tells you that you're wrong, you can simply point to this article where you have black activists in Chicago who are saying they're being replaced. That's it.
But this was always one of the problems with illegal immigration, which is that, I mean, was it, who was on our show talking about this? There are certain communities that are adversely affected by illegal immigration, and they're actually the same communities that often Democrat politicians are trying to win the vote from. You know, people in inner city communities, low-skilled workers, like agricultural workers. It's crazy to me that they were able to sell a no, leave the border open line for so long.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's funny because Democrat policies, they're just sabotaging their own voter base. And now it's coming back to bite them in a very hilarious narrative-breaking way in which Tucker Carlson says that the Great Replacement is not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact of Democrat policy. So what do you say now, corporate press, when they call Tucker a white supremacist or whatever? Better yet, let me do this. Let's have fun with this one. Great Replacement Wikipedia page.
Their Swalwell story is that he spends lavishly. His campaign will pay for like tens of thousands of dollars of luxury hotels, car service, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, everybody. Great Replacement is a white nationalist far-right conspiracy theory espoused by French author Renaud Camus. Okay. Camus, is that how you say it? Camus. And, uh-oh.
And black activists in Chicago.
And black activists in Chicago who are complaining they're being replaced by illegal immigrants. So, I don't know. What do we do with this one? Is the Great Replacement narrative going to disappear now? Because, Ann Coulter went on Bill Maher's show and said, Bill Maher said, we don't know who the shooter was in Kansas City. And she goes, well, we have some idea. And he goes, why? And she said, if it was a white guy, we'd know by now. And Bill Maher insulted her. This guy, Bill, I feel bad for him because he gets these big stories very, very wrong too often. And it's kind of embarrassing. When they mocked Dennis Prager back in 2019 over a story that was like 5 or 6 years old, that the left had been arguing that they should put tampons in the men's room because men menstruate. And Bill Maher and who was it? It was, who's the journalist? I forget his name. The son of, what's her face?
Anderson
Farrow.
Cooper?
No, Farrow. What's his face, Farrow? You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mia Farrow?
Yeah, her son. What's his face?
What is wrong?
Anyway.
I'm looking it up.
Anyway, Ann Coulter was like...
Ronan,
there you go.
Ronan Farrow.
Ann Coulter was like, if it was a white shooter, we'd know by now. Turns out, information about the shooter came out. It's reportedly he's confessed and he was a young black man. And you know what the crazy thing is? Do you know what the alleged reason for the shooting in the Super Bowl was? At the Super Bowl parade?
Oh, he was like, I was just being dumb or something like that.
No. They were looking at each other wrong.
Oh, yeah, that's
One
right.
guy said, what are you looking at? That's the quote. What are you looking at? And then the guy argued back, nothing. What are you looking at? And then they argued with each other. And then the shooter pulled out his gun.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they opened fire and they killed the person. They shot a bunch of kids. But this is, I forgot why I brought this up, but I was mentioning Bill Maher and Ann Coulter calling out like the narrative machine. Oh, right. Here's
Replacement theory.
Right. Now what's going to happen is, now that you have black activists saying they're being replaced, the corporate press will immediately drop all criticism of Great Replacement.
Yeah, and in fact, I think we should start calling it replacement theory. It doesn't have to be great, just like the Great Reset. Doesn't have to be, just call it reset theory. There are ways to replace your population by bringing in immigrants. Very, very simple.
Well, that is a way to do it.
But at what point is this going to get spun as like, no, it helps you. It helps you when we do this. I mean, that's what I think the Democrat Party or sort of progressive media does well, which is to say everything we do, no matter what, is in your benefit, and we will lie to you until you believe us. Like, I just don't trust that they will start walking this one back. I think they'll continue to lie.
It helps some people. It helps like corporations. Some people that want cheap labor. It can help.
It doesn't help the
their
people
bottom
it's
line.
actually impacting, and that's the problem.
I don't think it helps the communities necessarily.
It doesn't help the
you might
country.
meet
Illegal
some cool
immigration is
people.
bad.
There's some melting pot, some cultural, but with the internet, I mean, it used to be like I was in LA and I met some dudes from Mexico and I learned Mexican culture. Now the internet, I can learn Mexican culture without having to import
Also, people who
immigration.
migrate legally can bring culture in that way. You don't have to come illegally to do that. Illegally is bad.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
is bad.
It ultimately
In this instance, I agree with
you.
you.
People don't understand that it completely dilutes the tax base. Like you don't have any money that's coming in for your tax base, so it's competing for resources. People that need the resources at the bottom, who Democrats historically support the most, are now going to be illegal immigrants, and they're not Americans, not entitled to those things. Americans are.
There are times in history and places where replacement theory is needed. You have to, because your population is suffering and you don't have enough people. But when America's not in that situation right now.
Hold on. That scenario you're describing is the end of that civilization.
And it wouldn't even be a replacement. It would be more of just an invigoration of your society by
Invasion.
bringing in
Also,
new people.
rather
No.
than
Hold
bringing in
on.
other people.
That's kind of what we did in the early 1800s.
The only circumstance in which, like we're talking about the 1800s, in which this applies is if you are bringing in a culturally similar group of people. Otherwise, you are not invigorating a society. You are replacing it. So if there is a group of people, let's say there's 100 people, and 72 of them die in a great calamity. And so the chief says, well, we need workers, otherwise everything we've built won't be supported. Let's bring in other people. We need 70 some odd people. Those 70 some odd people instantly vote, and they vote against what your tribe was wanted. They will vote to seize assets. They will vote for their leader. And now there is a minority group with no power and no voting rights. That's just it. And I'm not talking, it's not a racial thing. It's a cultural thing. If there is look, we'll put it simply. 100 people live in a village, and they've built a bunch of machines and farming equipment, and they all insist everyone must wear a bow tie. Because bow ties are traditionally what you do. It's meaningless. 70 people die in a fire, and they say, we better bring in more people, otherwise we won't be able to maintain farming and we'll starve. So they bring in 70 people from various areas, and they're all wearing different kinds of ties. And they come in and they hold a vote. Should we keep the bow ties? And guess what? 70 people say no. All of a sudden now, nobody wears bow ties anymore. You might argue that doesn't matter, but when it's something like free speech, for instance, those 30 people are like, no. We're allowed to speak the way we want. And the 70 people say, no, you're not.
Well, this is something we talked about a long time ago when the study came out that in Louisiana, which has a lot of French influence, has a lot of Cajun influence, the second most common language spoken in the home was French. And that was true for decades and decades because it's a cultural tie. And this is, unique. It's regional culture. That's now going away. In fact, now the most commonly spoken second language is Spanish, which it's not bad. I don't mind if people, speak Spanish in the home, but it is the loss of that regional culture that is historic to that area. We give things up when we don't say things are worth preserving.
And you know what's really amazing? I just learned this. There's that story about San Francisco. I think it was appointed a non-citizen to their election commission. Mm-hmm. She said there is no proper translation for the word reparations in Cantonese and Mandarin. If there's no word for it, it can't happen. This is like, people need to understand this. There are concepts and ideas that don't exist. Your view of the world is built upon your language and your understanding of words and your ability to convey ideas. Reparations, you can break it down and try and define it. It is resources given to a group of people based on the presumption of past grievance against them and a debt owed. That's how you'd have to say it. But if there's no word for it, it means it's not something anyone's asking for, demanding, or expects. Because no one's going to come out and be like, I think because and then give us long-winded speech about a concept that is unfamiliar to these people. That means culturally, they probably don't think about the concept of reparations all that often. And that's why there's no word for it. It doesn't come up that their government pays people they've wronged, which is wild.
It is wild. I mean, cultures are different and language develops to support those cultures. And to your point and to Kurt's actual lifestyle, people could just have more children and bolster the population and culture that's here. I don't think that we necessarily have to, unless it's like an emergency crisis. I can't really see a situation that's like, well, having a weak border is justified because we have to bolster our population.
No, your country's gone.
It doesn't make any sense. You don't have a country. Why wouldn't we just have 6 kids in 6 years? Was that what you did? The crazy. Mm. But that's crazy to me. But I'm excited for you. It was a good time. But wouldn't encouraging. I mean, other countries in Eastern Europe are doing this, right? They're saying, we'll give you a tax break if you have more children, because their birth rates are declining, and they want to preserve their culture. They want to have not only people to care for their elderly. This is the problem Japan is having, that they'll have this aging class that needs people to care for them, and they won't have enough people, but they also want to preserve their language, their culture, their history, their traditions. And I think that's good.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.